which is the International Anti-Counterfeit Coalition. They're actually the same nonprofit who put together the Counterfeit Crimes Exhibition in DC. And they have a pretty innovative system. It's called Rogue Block, and I liked it because it rhymed with, it's almost like Vogue Block, which I think was pretty intentional. So what they have done is, I'd gone to a number of conferences, a number of symposiums, and everybody said, well, why don't you just go arrest the people on Canal Street? I'm sure that would start, bringing some awareness. And they said, that's small fry. We need to deal with the actual counterfeiters themselves. They said, if we start arresting people on Canal Street, that's maybe 0.5%. They said, people are selling most of the counterfeits online, so we really have to target these online sales. They'd also had a few different campaigns in New York where they thought about arresting people who had counterfeit bags, and they said, we can't do that in New York like we do in Paris. So they decided to abolish that. So the IACC came up in 2012 with this pretty innovative approach called Rogue Block. And pretty much what they do is they follow the money, similar to what a lot of the FBI had done. And if they find, they'll do an investigation, and if they find that somebody is selling counterfeit products, they actually cut their line of credit. You are given, as somebody who sells things, you're given one line of credit, not two. So if they cut your line of credit, that actually would cancel out all 75 or 250 of those URLs. So I thought that was pretty innovative. And then they went even a step further. They're now working internationally. So they have on their team, they have PayPal, they have Amazon, they have eBay, pretty much anybody. They have Apple Pay. So anybody who you would use to purchase a product from, or you would use as kind of the third-party purchaser, they have teamed up with. So to me, I thought that this was one of the most innovative approaches. Who they do not have on board yet is Alibaba.com. Alibaba is known as the one marketplace who does not regulate counterfeiters. And they're pretty much okay with selling counterfeit products. That Chanel 255 bag that I had purchased, I purchased it from Alibaba.com. It was $38, and I got it from China. I got it in about 5 days. So to me, that was extremely alarming that you can get a counterfeit that quickly and kind of that good for that cheap. But it's another problem that a lot of the different markets are facing as far as counterfeits go. So to get into a topic, though, is the gray market, or super fakes. So these are counterfeits that are created, but they're so good that they fool a lot of these different consumers, and they're pretty much so good that it's extremely hard to tell. So I'm going to give you, there's a little snippet of kind of the discussion about the gray goods, and then I'll show you a little snippet of, this is Susan Scafidi with one of the ABC journalists actually purchasing a super fake.
No. We all want bargains. We want cheaper things, so we turn around and say, fine, I'll take a fake.
But not just any old fake. Our bargain buddy Mark Elwood is back. This time spotting something new. The next generation counterfeit handbag. It's called a super fake.
A super fake comes from a factory, either at midnight where it vanishes when no one's looking, or maybe it was wastage. It was supposed to be damaged, and someone can slip it in their bag and take it home.
The super fake is better made, more expensive, harder to find.
The term super fake was invented because essentially this fake is better than you could believe. Hand a fake handbag to an expert in bags and say, is this real or not? They might not be able to tell.
In rare cases, experts say some are made with handcrafted leather, genuine handles and hardware. Some may even be produced in the same factories by moonlighting workers.
A super fit bag is simply a great-looking bag that most people...
So we'll get back to Valerie Skolniak because she speaks in just a sec. Let's see if we can get... Okay, so here's where they're actually buying a super fake on Canal Street.
Several garden variety fakes.
And as you have warned us, they offer the cheaper stuff first, and you have to really ask for higher quality.
At every turn, we're approached by sellers hawking other dodgy designer goods.
Thank you.
But we stay focused on finding a super fake. Finally, we're offered something special, a Chanel bag.
Beautiful. That's nice.
The real thing goes for nearly $5,000. A run-of-the-mill fake might cost 30 or 40 bucks. But this one wasn't nearly so cheap.
What is this one?
600. 600 is the highest price I've ever heard quoted on the street.
Can we give you 200?
What's wrong?
Two more for the Chanel.
No, it's not Chanel. It's gonna be.
We haggled and got the price down to $430. They even agreed to take a credit card if we throw in a 10% tip of $43. A souvenir shop in the neighborhood runs the charge. We are now the somewhat ashamed owners of a super fake handbag. It has surprisingly authentic details, down to the card with the serial number, which further checking showed was also fake.
We did it.
Super fakes thrive because no one has any sympathy for a big handbag brand. No one thinks, oh, that poor company, it makes so many millions. I wish they could make a few more million. So I don't think there's very much guilt associated with buying something that is totally illegal.
But a little guilt might be a good thing for shoppers. Even if you don't mind the moral equivalent of shoplifting from designers, you may care how much misery counterfeiters are spreading with your money.
Certainly, we have evidence that it's gone to fund organized crime, that it's gone to fund terrorism. If you put your name on the label, you're going to be more concerned about your factory standards than if you're putting somebody else's name on the label and faking it. And that does lead to all kinds of labor abuses, including child labor.
That's a lot of bad karma to carry around with your brand new fake handbag.
So kind of interesting, the irony of the NYPD sweater as he's ringing up the counterfeit. So this is a company I'd recently come across, and to me, this is one of the most innovative things, which it is a gentleman and a company, Entropy, and they have developed this wonderful piece of hardware. And for me, I said, I think this is the future in authenticating pieces. So what Entropy does is they really wanted to democratize the process of authenticating a bag. There is really not a standard, even though a lot of companies like to probably convince people. And for vintage stores as well, you go into a vintage shop and you hope that you're buying an authentic piece. They're not really able to actually authenticate it properly. Most people kind of look at the basic things, are the L's and the V's lined up, is the LV cut off or not, but they're not actually trained authenticators. And with these super fakes, it's really difficult because even people that have worked for past luxury brands, they're even fooling them. So we bring in the technology, and this is how we're able to hopefully authenticate different pieces in the future. So what the Entropy does is it takes a microscopic photo of the texture, the surface of your bag, and they have developed a database of luxury handbags and what the surface looks like. So what's interesting is that with a super fake, you might have things that they're actually made in the same factories, but it's very, very rare will you get all of the pieces that are made from the factory. With Louis Vuitton specifically, all of this hardware that you see here, they will give the specific amount of hardware for each bag that they're supposed to be given back. So they'll give the amount of hardware for 10 bags. They expect to see 10 bags, and if not, then there's a big problem. So what they'll do is they have taken the photographs of the surfaces of each part of the bag. So if you looked on that super fake, you had the main panel, you had the handles, you have the hardware, you have the outside, you have the bottom. They have taken photos of all of these. So this was a panel discussion I did recently with VidYouth, who is the CEO of the company, and you can see that this is the microscopic texture matching. So kind of interesting for the conservators as well is a nice piece of hardware that you can compare this. So they've done it, it's painless. You pretty much take the piece of hardware, you take the photo, you then connect it with your iPhone through Bluetooth, and you take the photo and it says within I think about 5 seconds, authentic or fake, and it'll tell you with the surface. And they say usually you should match up about 5 different parts of the bag to really make sure that's also the lining on the inside of the bag as well. So you can see for the authentic and then you have the counterfeit, it looks quite different when you get down to the microscopic level of it. So to me, I saw this as it would be wonderful if you're running a vintage store, you could buy this piece of hardware, you could then authenticate every single bag that comes through using technology, and then you know if you're selling a real or a fake. There are a few companies, if you look at Net-a-Porter and The Real Real. Those are two companies, as far as luxury brands go, that I do know that they authenticate them using proper authenticators. Although they're vintage stores, I'm not quite sure what they use to authenticate things. So I always see it as it's a little bit up in the air. So just to finish off with a few other things, something that you might have not thought of that kind of deals or touches on counterfeits is factory outlet stores. So this is kind of a new thing that's coming up in fashion law and in fashion, is outlets. What exactly are they selling you? Most people don't realize that when you purchase something from an outlet that you're not actually purchasing garments that are off-season. That may be garments that if you go to Ralph Lauren, they didn't sell, they send it to the outlet. That's not actually what you're buying if you go to a Ralph Lauren outlet store. They're making outlet-specific garments, but they're not actually telling you that. So the quality is completely different. The shirt will probably fall apart much quicker. It's probably made closer to the level of what is sold at Forever 21 or at H&M. But a lot of people are fooled by that. So there's not this transparency with a lot of these factory outlets. And recently, the Federal Trade Commission has launched kind of a new investigation or approach. They're very curious about the Federal Trade Commission, of course, protecting America's consumers. So they want to make sure that you're not fooled, you're not confused by when you go into a store like Marshall's. I was always curious, and people always think you see that compare at that the original price is $30 and you have saved $13.01. And I said, well, where did they get that $30 from? I said, if it is the hang tag and you can see the retail price of it, fine. But if not, where did they even come up with that number? Oftentimes, they just kind of guesstimate. And with that, it's actually fooling the consumer, and that's actually a huge problem because you're not supposed to deceive the consumer, and especially a large company like Marshall's. And if anybody watches the recent commercials from Marshall's or TJ Maxx with the Maxxinista, you'll probably notice that they really are doing a very good job on convincing you that you're getting the same seasonal goods and they're going into that store. You're actually not. Very rarely are you. You're probably getting things that are made specifically probably for Marshall's, and it might even be something that Ralph Lauren made for their outlet stores are now selling it to Marshall's. But places that are doing a really, really great job, and they are extremely transparent, is the J.Crew factory. If you look there and they say, oh, hey there, at jcrew.com we offer deals you've only found in our stores until now. Now those daily discoveries and satisfying steals are available around the clock. You should know that we have a team dedicated to creating fun, easy-to-wear pieces exclusively for the factory. No outtakes, no leftovers, just more of what you love for less. So here they're being extremely transparent and saying, we're making factory or outlet garments for this. We're not selling off-season goods. And the Outnet, which is the spin-off from Net-a-Porter. So this is another company who they're being very transparent on what exactly they are selling. So if you are looking for kind of authentic off-season goods, or if you're looking, well, you would go to Net-a-Porter, but if you're looking for things that are maybe at a little bit of a higher quality, or at least you know what you're buying, J.Crew Factory or the Outnet is a great source. So just to finish off, I'm going to show you a little snippet. This is a video that I had produced exclusively for the exhibition, and there is a series of interviews that I had done to give you a little bit more of an insider's perspective on the counterfeit industry. So I'll show you just a short snippet of it, but if you want to watch the full thing, I think it's about 16 minutes, you can just go to youtube.com and type in the museum at FIT, and you can see a series of this video and others that we have.
Product is simply when a manufacturer or a counterfeiter creates a copy of the bag but using the logo.
A counterfeit is a technical legal term for when we've copied identically or substantially identically a logo or a label, right? A knockoff might be something that's similar but not an exact copy in that same way.
Most counterfeit has a pretty dark connection. You know, you're talking drug trade, you're talking no respect for humanity whatsoever.
When you are buying a fake, you are funding child labor, drugs, drug cartels, and terrorism.
It can seem like buying a counterfeit bag is just something to do on Canal Street when you're visiting New York. However, there are actually a lot of repercussions to buying that counterfeit bag. The first are economic. The taxes that you would otherwise pay and that the company selling you the bag would otherwise have paid don't enter the economy. So there are financial issues. There are questions of how and where that bag was made. Was there child labor involved? If you're putting, and we know from the disasters in Bangladesh that even very legitimate companies have problems monitoring their supply chains. If you're putting somebody else's name on the bag, if you're not even putting your own name on an item standing behind it, how much less likely are you to pay attention to the conditions of the workers?
I think there's the assumption that the products are, they're just, it's more frivolous, but in reality, a lot of the counterfeiting can fund other activities.
Global investigators work on these issues, and they do it quietly. They do it for the brands. They're well paid. It's around the globe, certainly in China. But as I said earlier, if there are raids on 6 factories in China, they open up a week later in perhaps a different location. While there's a lot being done, unless consumers understand what they are funding, this is going to continue and the demand will continue.
The problem is a lot of these counterfeiters can start new websites, they can easily register new domains.
Consumers need to be much more proactive when buying anything online. Click on the icons on the website to make sure that you can get to a person. Things like capitalization of words. If a word is not capitalized that should be, it's a counterfeit website. If the language is somewhat awkward and it doesn't quite sound like an English-speaking person wrote that copy, that is a red flag. Do not buy there.
When they are prosecuted, it's difficult to find them. It's not like there's someone sitting in a dark basement somewhere selling counterfeits. These people are all over the place, and to be able to find them and prosecute them is very difficult for the courts.
The NYPD has a very important trademark infringement bureau, and I work closely with several of their police executives on these issues. And they have done a phenomenal job in taking down manufacturing sites in the 5 boroughs of Manhattan. And over the past probably 2.5 years, they have closed 18 manufacturing sites.
The movement to prosecute third parties is something that really started to develop, because those are the people that the courts can hold accountable. A lot of those companies are registered in the U.S.
In France, if you purchase a counterfeit, you can go to jail and you will be fined up to 300,000 euro.
There is protection in Europe. We're the only country that doesn't have that protection. Okay, fine. But with counterfeiting, it's not only illegal to sell it, it's illegal to own it. So if you're walking the streets of Paris and you're carrying a fake Vuitton bag, you're breaking the law.
Harper's Bazaar covered counterfeiting and the counterfeit industry for 8 years. The coverage was really to open consumers and readers' eyes. Everyone said the same thing, maybe using different words, but it was as simple as this: I had no idea that.
A little preview of that. Coming up that we have at the museum, our next exhibition is on global fashion capitals. So showing the fashions from established fashion capitals, Paris, New York, London, and Milan. But now we're looking at new fashion capitals. Antwerp, of course, establishing itself with the Antwerp 6, but now looking at different fashion capitals from Stockholm to Mexico City to also Madrid. So if you're in New York, it opens on June 2nd, and it'll be up until, I think, November 15th. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening.